Hello, folks, and welcome to the TKW Podcast. I am Matt Spendley, and I'm joined tonight by Kyle Maggio.
It was a hell of a one today, Matt.
How about the end? The fourth quarter was just tremendous, as well as the third quarter, when the Knicks outscored the Grizz by 16 points. Just a pretty fun game. And I said this to you before we started recording, but you could even hear it in Breen's voice. He was very exclamatory. 3 wins in a row. I know we mostly want them to tank, but you know, that's 3 pretty fun wins back to back against 3 pretty darn good teams too.
Yeah, we said it all, to begin the season in the summer that we didn't really care to be rooting for losses this year. There's too many young kids that we want to be successful and we want to take strides that look like legitimate players. So when we can get some wins off the backs of that, then they're always going to feel good. And last couple of days we've seen like every kind of person step up and have a good game. It wasn't, like a Tim Hardaway Jr. 30-point game stretch. This is Burke was in Boston. Then the Pelicans game was the Mudiay Resurgence game, and Trier went off. And then tonight, Kanter had the 21-26 performance, and it just another well played game by Mudiay. It's like everybody's kind of chipping in right now. Vonleh was tremendous the last 3 games too. So it's just a lot of that's the good part, I guess, about a young team is that there's so many different guys who can play hero.
Now, to that point, I'm curious how you feel about this because they do have young guys that are playing, but you also get in tonight's game, you get only 7 minutes from Kevin Knox. You get 13 minutes from Mitchell Robinson. Frank was mostly pretty quiet. He came back in at the end of the game, hit a couple big free throws. Are you worried about, you see Enes Kanter 41 minutes, Tim Hardaway 38 minutes, Trey Burke 29 minutes, Emmanuel Mudiay 23 minutes. Does that worry you at all that it's maybe the guys that aren't the longest term projects for this team that are playing the best right now when they're winning?
It's yes and no, I guess, because a lot of these guys are still relatively young. It's just not the young guys that we want to be playing. So, I know we obviously want Frank to play more and play well, but then you have to always remember Mudiay is, 22 years old?
Yeah.
And, I mean, technically he's still a young guy, so I don't think the front office or the coaching staff views young the same way we do. Like, young to us is always, the first or second year guys that are still pretty young in age also, and just, wanting them to play more and succeed and get comfortable. But I think the coaching staff probably thinks anyone 23-ish and under is young. So
they're prioritizing essentially giving all of these guys an opportunity. And we've seen Emmanuel Mudiay perk up, specifically the game in New Orleans. He was fantastic. Kyle, you've said this before. I don't think people talk about Alonzo Trier outside the Knicks. It's absurd.
Yeah, and I'm being completely serious. I'm not trying to be funny, and I'm not trying to troll.
Because we joke about the undrafted thing, but this is actually a serious thing.
Yeah, no, again, not trying to troll at all. I understand that's a lot of my Twitter brand, but I'm not trying to troll at all. I think the first time that I saw somebody outside of Knicks Twitter talking about Alonzo Trier was maybe 15 minutes before this podcast started, and I was perusing my timeline on Twitter, and I saw Matt Moore, who's HP Basketball on Twitter, and he said, he sent a tweet out, and I don't want to misquote him, but he said something about, of course, the Knicks are going to be surprisingly good this year and then play too well to be, out of position for Zion Williamson.
Right.
And that was, I think, the first thing. And then somebody asked him, if he was kidding, and then he was just no, Alonzo Trier is playing well and all that. So that was the first tweet that I saw. I'm being completely serious. And we're all on Twitter a lot. And no one's talking about Alonzo Trier. Nobody.
It's absurd. I know I've also joked multiple times about him being the best undrafted player of all time, which is obviously not true. But the amount of good games this guy has being undrafted, he's already a good player. I pointed out another play tonight because I was tweeting the game. His patience in the pick and roll is just already next level NBA stuff. It's a skill that he has in his back pocket, and We've talked too about his chase down blocks. There's a lot of really encouraging parts of his game that are small that only we would know. I think that this is like a bigger issue. Do you think the Knicks, just in terms of this team and how much people care about it, do you think they might be the least cared about team in the NBA outside of Knicks fans? I think they might be. No one ever talks about anything about the Knicks.
I think it's got to be some combination of like the redundant conversations that happen on Twitter all the time. Well, same old Knicks, the Knicks suck. Same old Knicks, the Knicks suck. Same old Knicks, the Knicks
LOL
every year, right?
Knicks.
LOL Knicks, like, and sometimes they're trying to be funny, and sometimes it's trolling, and a lot of times people are just very serious with their analysis. It's just not a good team in New York, and that's it. So I think at that point, and then especially without KP, it was just like again going to be the same thing. So rather than go through the whole rigmarole, everybody just skipped it and ignored them altogether, which is very strange because normally for any big market team, like they still, even when the Lakers were bad, we were always hearing about Jordan Clarkson,
Ugh,
and
how'd that one age?
yeah, yeah. So I don't really get why. I don't know what it's going to take. I think it's going to have, if they go on a sudden win streak now, if this turns in this 3-game winning streak turns into like 7 or 8 somehow, then I feel like they're going to be like, oh, Tim Hardaway Jr. is this and that, and look at them, they're playing 500-ish ball. But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen before then.
I don't really think I'm blaming people for not wanting to talk about the Knicks either, because they just don't have that many players that outside of our circle that people should really care about, because Tim Hardaway, people just, it's an out of sight, out of mind thing. He's a highly paid shooting guard. That's a volume scorer. Whatever he does on a day-to-day basis is not that exciting. Meanwhile, we're watching and we know that he's been mostly quite good this year, and specifically recently, save from the New Orleans game, which was just absolutely atrocious. And he did manage to salvage tonight's game after a tough start. But yeah, it's just been some guys that have stepped up. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I said this on the podcast maybe a couple months ago, or I guess last month at the beginning of the season, why I was just so confused why all of these teams ended up giving up on Noah Vonleh, because another, not like a crazy big game. He only had 7 and 6 with a couple assists, but defensively, he's so stout. He's just a smart NBA player. And we saw a stretch in there for a little while where he kind of disappeared and then ended up coming back with a couple big games recently. I just really, really enjoy him on the team. And we've had some articles on the website too that have condoned for this, but I'd like to see him come back next year and be a part of something potentially greater and see what he can do if he's playing in lineups next to Porzingis.
Yeah, I mean, I think I brought up this point a couple of weeks ago, but as you know, I love Julius Randle, and a lot of things that Vonleh is good at are like poor man's versions of what Julius Randle can do. So I would be incredibly on board. I would definitely want to see that pairing because it would be a knockoff version of what I had hoped for. So I don't know how realistic is it in your opinion if we're still shooting for a big free agent. Like if they get Durant, Vonleh's gone, no?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know if he's going to command much money anyways, I think that they could pretty easily bring him back on maybe, I don't know, a minimum deal. See, this goes back to my point before, right? Like, how many teams out there are sitting here watching the Knicks on a day-to-day basis looking for potential free agents in the future? Because every team has those kind of guys on staff that are monitoring the rest of the NBA and seeing what's going on. I'm not sure that Noah Vonleh is a guy that would jump off the screen for a lot of teams, so I don't think that he would necessarily command much money. So even if they got a big free agent, the roster would certainly shift, but I don't see why they wouldn't be able to bring him back. I'm not exactly sure what would end up happening, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Okay. Oh, and you mentioned how could a player like him who's this smart, not get oh sorry, how has he bounced around
Yes.
so many times? But I saw somebody tweet that basically to answer that question, he just was not very good before this. But I don't know how much of that is true. I guess there's a lot of Blazers fans who seem to think that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Blazers fans that I've talked to kind of said he was inconsistent, but that he was always this kind of talented. I know Nate Jones, who's at Jones on the NBA. It's one of my favorite NBA follows, but he talks about it all the time that he wishes Vonleh was still in Portland.
That matters too. When a team loses a guy that's kind of a fringe player and they're upset about it, like that speaks volumes to that player's ability to impress and leave a lasting impression on a team. I just really enjoy when he's on the court, and I think he makes the Knicks better top to bottom.
Certainly
And
does.
and his shooting, like he's been, he had another three tonight. He had 4 threes in the first half on Friday, which was incredible. In Chicago at the end of his tenure, where he played 20 to 25 games last year, he started shooting more threes and he wasn't very efficient. But this year he's had some moments where he can be a floor spacer and he can stretch out the floor and be a guy that can make an impact on an offense. I just think he makes the Knicks much better when he's on the floor, and I thoroughly enjoy watching him play basketball. He's one of my favorite guys on this team.
Because he's easy to root for because he's your typical like fan favorite kind of guy, the way he hustles and works his ass off on both ends. But he's kind of like a step above that too because he's also incredibly smart. It's not like he's just a scrappy, physical guy. Like he's actually talented and smart with, things he can do with ball handling, and so it's just I don't know, just it's really like a early fan favorite kind of guy.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I've enjoyed him. You know who I haven't enjoyed, Kyle? Can you guess?
It's dude, he's I've wished for weeks. Every time I've had to tweet a game, I go, I really hope that Mario Zodi has a good game tonight because I really like him as a guy. Like I like him as a player. I like his skill set. And then every game, every single game, he just does nothing for me. Nothing.
I don't think he was awful tonight, but he certainly wasn't good. At least it looks like he was trying on defense, and he had the nice give and go with Vonleh, which was a beautiful play. But God damn, dude, like that's so his last four games, he has scored. Tonight he had 4 points. Against the Pelicans, he had 3 points. Against the Celtics, he had 3 points. And against the Blazers, he had 2 points. Against the Pelicans, he had 2 points. So over his last 6 games, because he had two DMPs, he scored a combined 11 points. 11.
It's not a lot.
It's not. It's really not a lot. It's not even close to a lot. He's brutal. He's brutal. And like I said, I think that it wasn't his worst game tonight, but still nowhere near the guy that we thought we were getting. He's just a frustrating guy, and he's a guy I do not enjoy watching play the game of basketball. He's the anti-Noah Vonleh.
I hate to kind of play that, that armchair psychiatrist kind of shit, but whenever I watch him, I can't help but think that he, by miles and miles and miles, is like he overthinks everything he does.
I think you're absolutely right.
Because every time I see him get the ball, he just hesitates. Like no matter what it is, if he was gonna take somebody off the dribble quickly after getting a pass, it always turns into like this little half-assed jab step. When he's gonna shoot, he always seems to like spin the ball or like just this little baby pump fake. He's just always unsure of whatever it is that he wants to do. I don't know. I don't know why. Why would he be in his own head this much? But it seems like he's always flinching or sort of like pump faking or just, and he, with no plan, with no direction. And he always just kind of gets stuck. And then he throws up a really, like he threw up one layup tonight. It was like a sweeping, scooping layup that just went off the other side of the backboard. It's just, it's frustrating because like the value of his signing at the time, I was like, oh yeah, he's an interesting player. He had a nice second half last year. Okay, I'll take a flyer on it. And then whenever that kind of stuff happens, you always like look for the positives. Like when you were like, oh, he played 52% of his minutes at the four last year, and that could bode well as a playmaker in Fizdale's office. And you talk yourself into ways that he could be a really fun player on a bad team. And it's just been the total opposite.
Yeah, has not worked out well. And I was hoping he would shoot more threes this year, and he hasn't even really been doing that. And he certainly hasn't been efficient. We know that much. It's been frustrating to watch, and I hope that his minute share is decreased, especially considering that we've seen Damian Dotson essentially out of the rotation for the last 3 games. Another DNP tonight for Dot. When you're giving minutes to Hazonia and not Dotson after their performances and what Fizdale's decided to do with some of these lineups, I just don't think it's a smart decision because Hazonia's a guy, there's no chance he's back on the Knicks next year, right? There's no shot. Dotson is a guy that we know is going to be a part of this team simply because he was a guy they drafted, and he's going to be around at least till next year, and then they can evaluate their options once his contract is up, once they have to make a palpable decision on what to do with him on the roster. Those are the moves on the fringes that I think don't make sense from a standpoint of trying to see what you have and experiment, because we saw the Knicks have a really effective lineup that was playing Dotson 25 to 30 to 35 minutes a game. And just because the Knicks have had a 3-game winning streak, I think that specifically tonight, perhaps this was the case, but it's not like their starting lineup has been exactly the reason for that. Because, like you mentioned, in the Boston game, you got a great effort from Trey Burke. In the New Orleans game, you had a great game from Alonzo Trier, in addition to Mudiay, who has been starting. But the Hazonia Dotson minutes, they got to switch soon. We can't keep having this. It's just not acceptable in my mind.
Yeah, and Fizdale said he's looking around the 20-25 game mark to have a starting lineup locked in. And I'm going to partly listen to my next question anyway. But um, does it feel like, because I think Dotson's going to be back at that 25-minute mark. I just think anybody with a brain, whether it's the eye test, whether it's you're looking at the numbers, no matter what you decide to use for the argument, like Dotson's been just miles and miles better than Hazonia has for those minutes. And I just can't, I can't see, yeah, there's, to me, like Hazonia's going to turn into like a 5 to 10 minute a game guy, and then Dotson's going to get the nod.
We can
I
only
just
hope.
can't, there's just no way. And I think the signing of Hazonia was two things. I think it was they were encouraged by his last half of the season last year, but also that it's that coupled with that he's Perry's guy, isn't he?
Yeah,
Didn't they draft him? So
yeah.
I'm sure he's like, look, this was my pick. I like the talent level. I think, he must have really thought it was a good fit, and it hasn't been. Sometimes that shit happens. I mean, there's nothing you could do about it sometimes. But I guess my next question is about the starting lineup. What do you think of Emmanuel Mudiay starting point guard for the rest of the year?
It doesn't sound like a terrible proposition, which is hysterical considering over the summer and into the preseason, we were basically like, well, he's just not going to play, right? And they could just get rid of him when they have to sign Trier. I still cannot bring myself to buy it. I just don't buy it. Like, I think that when you watch him, he certainly looks more comfortable, and I think he's more confident in the player that he is, and I give credit to Fizz for potentially instilling some of that confidence. We saw the clip that was going around all summer, and people bring it up every single time, is when he looked at Mudiay and said, we're going to get you right, and he has gotten him right. And I think you need to give the coaching staff some credit there to give them the credit they deserve for getting a player that was basically on the fringes of the league if he was going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And now, it makes sense to see what you have. I still don't think that in general he's ever going to be some sort of good basketball player. I just don't buy it because I think that the numbers still aren't going to back this up from the advanced statistics, how he performs when he's on the court versus how they perform when he's off. He's always been tough there. I like that he's been shooting more threes. And because last year, what did he miss? Like his first 22 attempts from three as a Knick. And then this year, he certainly hasn't been incredibly efficient. And he's shooting 31%. But just to have that in the back pocket and to take them, he had 2 tonight. I like that part of his game, and I just like what I've seen. The awesome dunk in the fourth quarter off the Trey Burke steal. Those moments matter for a player, and they give them the confidence they need to become whatever they're going to be. So credit to the Knicks for putting some faith in Mudiay. Credit to Mudiay for working hard. We mentioned that on the broadcast. Breen brought it up that he lost 10 pounds over the offseason, got himself more in shape because he wasn't in great shape last year. Like I said, I'm still not buying it, but it's been nice to watch him, which was the exact opposite of how we were talking about him last year.
I guess the crazy thing for me is it doesn't even look like he's changed anything about his approach. It just looks like, I mean, the couple things that I noticed is um, he's working his ass off defensively. He made a couple of nice plays in the New Orleans game. I think he finished that game with 4 steals, but it was how he got the steals, because sometimes steals just kind of, it's right in front of you kind of thing. But he had 2 steals. One where I forgot which New Orleans player was it, but he saved the ball on the side of the court, and Mudiay was just waiting for the ball to be saved, and he just snagged it, went in for the, I think he got fouled. I don't think he made the layup, but then there was another one where someone was just lobbing a lazy pass, but the Mudiay started from the corner and timed it all the way out, and the pass was thrown, up on the wing. So he's making really heads up defensive reads too, and he's kind of using that big body of his a little bit more. But offensively, I don't really notice him doing anything different. He's just still moving the ball around. Um, he's just kind of just been more effective. I think he's shooting over 50% from the field still.
Yeah, he's
He's
right at
just
50%.
he's just making things, and when he goes to the rack now, it doesn't look like he's looking for contact on the fall over. He's still falling sometimes, but it looks like he's going up a little bit stronger. Maybe it's the weight he's lost. Maybe he's a little more explosive. Maybe we're just overanalyzing it because he's making slightly more shots. But whatever it is, it's been fun, and you could tell he's actually working his ass off. So I think that's the more encouraging part of it.
And what he's doing doesn't feel incredibly unsustainable, right? It's not like the Trey Burke thing where last year we knew, like, man, he was just shooting such a high percentage. We knew that was not going to continue. I don't think what Mudiay is doing right now is necessarily some sort of unsustainable feat that he couldn't keep doing. He pretty easily could keep averaging 12 points and have a nice game like on Friday where he scores 27, kind of pop off a little bit. It doesn't feel like this is unsustainable. I'm just still not going to buy into him being a viable long-term option at guard for any NBA team if you're looking to have a good winning environment. I just don't buy that. But what he's doing right now, he could certainly keep it up. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It just even his threes, like they're not wild pull-up threes or even really off the screen. Like a lot of times he's just wide open.
Right.
That's exactly what happened in the New Orleans games. That's what happened a couple times tonight. He was just wide open. And I'm gonna reach really far back for this, but I think on a pod that we had Joe Nardone on, we talked about Mudiay, and I've someone brought up his like spot up 3-point numbers, and they were good. And I've forgotten what context we brought it up, but basically like, oh, if that was the one positive from this trade that he could bring, it's spot up shooting. And then um, we all kind of laughed it off and shouted it down because that was the only positive we had really found. And if that's valid from what I remember, then um, I don't know. I mean, that's what he's doing now, so that's fun that translated.
It's a good skill to have, and it helps out in offense. I think his assist numbers haven't been incredibly high. He had 4 tonight, but we
But he
know
whips
that
the ball around a lot
he
too.
does. He
Like
does. Yeah.
it doesn't show up, but not really hockey assists, but he gets things moving.
Right. Like we shouldn't just look at assists and have that be the end all be all for passing numbers. Certainly not. We're better than that. But the Knicks as a team have struggled. And I think that a lot of that goes back to the fact that they just don't have that many creative players in the pick and roll when they're running that type of offense, when they're setting a screen with Kanter or Robinson. And that's why I think I like Trier a lot, because he brings an element to an offense that they don't have from their other guards. Because I've never been the biggest Trey Burke fan. I don't think he's an especially creative player in the pick and roll. I think he's a good scorer, but I don't think that he necessarily has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. And with Frank, obviously, it's a lot of entry-level stuff. It's the pocket passes that he's been good at. So with Trier, what he provides there is a lot of what they're missing from other positions. With Mudiay, he works a lot in that mid-range. He's able to use his body, like you said, which is nice because he has the big frame at the point guard position. But Mudiay, in general, has been just good, and we'll see if he can keep it up. We certainly don't have any crazy expectations. To flip it around to the other guy, Trey Burke was awful tonight. He is just a day-to-day. We should never really rely on him for the same type of output. He was 3 of 15 tonight, just generally had some tough shots. And in the end of a game, he's kind of like Tim Hardaway, where you feel like he's just feast or famine. And it's like, okay, this is either going to go well and he's going to have a fantastic game, or he's going to end up shooting them right out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a couple games removed from the Boston game when he looked so good, but that's just it's his style of game. I mean, it's a lot of finesse, it's a lot of ISO and having to create, and that's not going to fly every night with certain matchups. So, like you said, it's got to be a game by game thing because as fun as he can be, it's just not something that we should always be relying on.
For sure, for sure. Hey, I wanted to talk to you about that video of you teaching your cousin flip cup.
Yeah.
I am wildly impressed that he got it on his third try.
Um, it was a strange situation. So we were playing Flip Cup, and he asked me what it was that we were doing, so I showed it to him, and he's a smart kid, as you can see,
Of course
and
he is.
so the first time he does it, he like flings it way up, and it almost hits the ceiling, and I was like, no, 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 you got to do it like really light, and then I show him, and then all of a sudden he gets it, so I was like, oh, okay, I was like, so just do it a couple more times, so then he throws it a little high, too high again, and then the very next time he gets it again, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna start recording this, so because his father actually wasn't there that night, and so I
Oh, see,
sent it,
now it's making
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Dad's
and that was
away
my
and you show him all the tricks, huh?
yeah, yeah. So that was he's my best friend, so I sent it to him, and we got a kick out of it. But he ended up getting 9 in the first like
Wow.
10 minutes or so. So kid's got talent. So
So future frat leader, future president of the frat, clearly.
clearly,
It's coming.
gotta groom him. You gotta groom him early.
Exactly. You know who's a guy that probably wishes he was the president of a frat because sometimes he acts like this on social media? Enes Kanter.
Mm. Did you see his tweet today?
No, what do you
Tonight
say?
rather after the game, he tweeted simply a GIF, and it was the Fizdale take that for data.
I love it. I love it. We didn't really talk at the top, which we probably should have, of how nice a win this is for Fizz. That has to feel awesome. And I bet the Knicks were sort of galvanized because of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really looked like they were fighting for him. I mean, Cantor put up 21 and 26, and
He's an
I think
animal.
that's his career high in rebounds, if I'm not mistaken. I
It
think it was
is.
25 before this,
Yep.
and so that was good. Um, and again, I know like people like to harken back to his numbers often being hollow or at least ineffective, considering how much he gives up on defense. Um, Tonight was one of those nights where his sort of like that Orlando game in Orlando last weekend, but where his hustle on the glass actually kept him in the game, and his style of play actually kept him in the game. This was a very physical um, game in the modern NBA. You don't see as much anymore, but Memphis is still playing that way, and as long as Marc Gasol's on that team, it appears it's going to be that way. And they're a good team, very physical defensive team, and these guys just Cantor was fighting all night. They all seem to be fighting hard to keep this thing close, and uh, I don't know. I just enjoy it. I enjoy some of those defensive battles now. We don't see them anymore, so it's nice to see guys lock in.
It feels like such a different game when you go play Memphis, right? Like when you're going to New Orleans and the Knicks play the Pelicans at home on Friday, and the Pelicans just want to run and run and run, and the Grizzlies just want to get you down in the mud and they want to make it dirty. And we saw how physical the game was. I didn't think the officiating was as bad as some people on our feed did when we were going along with the game, but there were certainly some calls that I didn't think were right. They would all of a sudden let Jaren Jackson be all up in someone's grill, and Marc Gasol's all over there, and then all of a sudden the next time they're just playing good stout defense and they were calling fouls. Little inconsistent, but I am not surprised Cantor popped off in this game. It just felt like an Enes Kanter matchup because they just gave him the ball on the post and he was able to work.
He fucking cooked us all too. Most of the night he was
He
cooking
did.
us all.
He did. That hook shot that he has is just, it's a move he goes to a lot, but when it's so effective, like if you're defending him, I think you just need to know that that's what he always wants to go to. But luckily, his post game is so refined that he can pull out those other moves. This is one of the only matchups I think in the league that Cantor clearly makes the most sense, just because of the nature of playing the Grizzlies, what they want to do with the game, and you're able to get Cantor in a matchup like this and let him eat, which he certainly did tonight.
Yeah, I mean, kind of comes at a fun time because we had that article last week, and I think you posted something on defense, and it got Clarence Gaines' attention.
Ah, yes, I did.
Yep. So he's been a hot topic of conversation. So it's nice to see him, really put forth a great effort like this tonight.
The defense clip was funny because he had mostly been playing pretty well, if I remember correctly, but it was just a clip of the Knicks running down in transition after he missed a bucket, and he was
Nowhere
the
to be
only one
found.
that wasn't in the frame.
Nowhere to
And
be found.
no, he was nowhere. He had no interest in going back on defense. Dude, you missed the layup. You're not going back on defense. Come on. What if LeBron's taught us nothing else? Isn't it that?
Yeah. Yeah, this is true.
All right. Yeah. So I think the Fizz thing shouldn't go overlooked. I liked seeing Marc Gasol talk about how they've buried the hatchet and Fizz talk about that. I like that about sports. When we're able to kind of look at something and determine that maybe both of them were kind of shitty about it, and then they were able to kind of look at it a year later and be like, I think Marc Gasol's probably not over it though. It doesn't
No,
feel like it.
no, it doesn't. Being honest, I think this is just one of those like I wish people would stop asking us about it things. So let's just say what we got to say and move on.
So I'm a sucker.
So, I mean, this isn't the first rodeo that we've seen with these kinds of things. They do this all the time. You just say what you got to say for the camera, keep it moving. It's much easier.
No, you're right. All right, let's talk briefly about the starting lineup and the decisions that are going to be have to made coming up soon, because you had mentioned this is game now 21 for the Knicks, and they're 7-14. They had a starting lineup earlier in the year that worked well, but they went away from it because Fizz said they weren't winning games. He didn't feel like it was going to be most effective for them. They've had this starting lineup, and they've won 3 games in a row, but I'm curious over the next 4 games because Hazonia has been playing so poorly. I don't really think at this stage anyone else is going to leave the starting lineup. I feel like Mudiay, Hardaway, Vonleh, and Kanter are locks at this point. Hazonia just doesn't feel like a guy that's going to stick there. So what sort of decision do you think that they make? Do you think it might be as simple as putting Dotson back in? Although you have to consider the fact that he hasn't played recently. So what do you hope that Fizz decides to do at that Hazonia spot in the starting lineup, assuming you're okay with them keeping the other 4 in?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Vonleh could be expendable from that lineup if Knox just kept that nice little string of games going. Um, he hasn't since. He's struggled with either fouls or just, ineffectiveness in general. And I was hoping he can kind of get a stranglehold on that 4 once he came back from the ankle injury, but he really hasn't. He hasn't been bad. I don't think he could be better for sure, but I'm mostly encouraged. But that's a different convo. I think it really is just Dotson getting put back in. I don't see how you could take Vonleh out. He's mostly been one of the better players on this team this year. He has a quiet game every now and then, but I mean, who outside of Vonleh could you really make an argument for?
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else.
Yeah, that's got to be it, right?
Yeah,
Him and Timmy.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious what they decide to do there because I just don't think he would put Dotson back in the starting lineup after DNPing him for 3 straight games. I just don't know if I buy that, but I also don't think he can tangibly look at us and say, yeah, I'm going to keep playing Mario Hazonia. His minutes were a little lower. He only played 21 tonight, but I don't think you can look everyone in the eyes and say, this is what we think is best and this is our best lineup. I think that there's changes that need to be made there.
I agree. I just think he has a brain. He knows. He knows. You can look at all the numbers in the world. You go look at the games that Dotson played in. I mean, this is a very obvious case of them just giving everybody the starting nod just to give them a chance to prove themselves and try out different roles on the team and kind of the last hurrah, if you will. I know we thought maybe we saw the end of that in the preseason, but it seems that that's not really the case. So I think that's really what it is. I think, Fizdale kind of put a limit on how much tinkering he has to do with those. And I just don't, I can't possibly see a big role for him. I'm sorry. Like a 15-minute a night kind of guy. I just don't see anything larger at this point.
Do you have your Instagram notifications on for all the players?
I do.
Because I had mine on too, and it just says Emmanuel Mudiay made a post, and I heard your phone vibrate.
Yep.
Synergy. Absolute synergy.
And it is him just yamming it.
That slam was awesome. It almost took me aback because I didn't realize at first that he actually successfully dunked it. And I almost assumed that he would mess it up because it's just not something that we've seen Mudiay do. We know he can yam, but man, that was awesome. And that's a moment. You got to feel good for the guy, after nearly just not even having a role with this team, and all of a sudden he's been much better. It's encouraging, and you feel good for him. I love the pick, though. I gotta peep it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't say we ruled him out, but we sort of did.
I think we ruled him out.
we did, but we've often said that we don't mind being wrong about players. We don't. We make our observations. We call it like we see it, and when we're wrong, we eat crow. And Jesus Christ, we're about to get a lot of crow with Mudiay because he's on a hell of a run, man.
He is, and we'll see if he can keep it up. Looking ahead, the Knicks play a bunch of Eastern Conference opponents. Weirdly, they don't play another Western Conference team until December 17th, but they're at Detroit, at Philly, home for Milwaukee and Washington, at Boston again, and then home for Brooklyn and Charlotte, at Cleveland, at Charlotte, at Indiana. So they got a bunch of Eastern Conference teams coming up. When we're looking like 10 games from now, so they're 7-14 now, right? Where do you think that they're going to be at that point once they get some of these Eastern Conference opponents? Because I still think that this was mostly something that it's not going to stick. I still think that the Knicks are one of the worst 5 teams in the league. I don't think that that's changing despite 3 nice wins. Also, full disclosure, I haven't watched the Boston game yet. I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm so excited because winning in Boston with the Knicks is like a top 3 thing that I just love in sports. Out of every single team I root for, beating the Celtics in Boston is just a euphoric high for me, and I'm so excited to watch. I can't wait.
You know what's funny? Well, one, that's correct. That's always the best feeling in the world. And two, remember before the regular season started, we were talking about if they could overachieve at all, or
Hmm.
the likely wins they would have. And I forgot you or I said that it would be great if they could just lose to all the shitty losing teams, and if they're going to get any wins, make it against good teams, because that would be exciting. It would
Right.
prove a little something when you're beating good teams. And I mean, it's delightful when one of those could be Boston, especially after that first game they played where Kevin Knox got hurt. They played that game really scrappy and really almost pulled that one out too. So it's nice to see like 2 straight games. Like even if we have to split them, they've been really giving Boston hell, and that's fun. And Boston does in fact stink. They're a bad team, and Brad Stevens is coaching for his job.
He's
You hate to
coaching for
see
his
it.
job. He absolutely is. He's on the hot seat. Let's discuss.
Oh, God, 10-10. Yikes.
I'm
Yikes.
crying. I can't believe they're 10-10. It's my favorite thing going on right now. The Celtics people freaking out. You guys talked about it on the pod on Thursday, but the Bill Simmons clip of him saying the Celtics are going to win 67 games. They're going to be blowing teams out. They're going to have all these guys, all their bench warmers out to
Oh,
close games because they're going to be ahead. I can't get enough of it. It's
I love this song.
hysterical.
Oh
My
my,
God.
it is, it is. I love nothing more, and we get to play handed because when they lose to a bad team, they're gonna freak out. But when they lose to the bad team, and the bad team is the Knicks, oh, I mean, we're gonna get jokes off.
They thought they were going to win 67 games, and they lost to Trey Burke and company
Mm.
on their own floor.
You just really hate
Incredible.
to see that.
Oh,
You really do.
it was a goddamn shame. Let me tell you. Let me
But
tell you.
yeah, you're gonna have a blast. That was a great game.
And I'm excited. It'll be
It
fun.
was very Hornets game Burke like. It was just
He can low
a
key
good
like
time.
he's pretty electric when he gets going. Like that Charlotte game, I think is going to go down. Like that was one of the most fun games last year. When I think of last year, I think of the Charlotte game, the Michael Beasley game where he torched the Celtics on like right before or right after Christmas sticks out in my head. Other than that, I mean, like once Burke got there, they were basically just terrible. So that's what sticks out. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Were there any other like seminal moments last year in games that were awesome? Like the KP dunk against Phoenix, I think will always stick out.
No, just didn't he have that 30-point stretch of games?
Yeah, to start the year. Yeah, he was.
I
That
mean,
feels like
November was really fun. They just played really, really well as a whole.
that feels like a long, long, long time ago, and it was only a year ago.
I mean, because in that span of a year, we had to go from, hey, KP's a legit number one option that could lead an Eastern Conference playoff team, to, wow, so Kevin Knox is here. I hope he rebounds a little bit better, and they can build around KP next year as we hope to get another top pick. It's just, going from, okay, I think the rebuild may be over, and we're moving on to, okay, well, we're in full on rebuild, and look at all these rookies.
Really tough. Been a tough sort of year to establish the timeline, but these kind of games. Although I don't think we need to give our lottery spiel again because I think we've said it enough. And those of you that are privy to the details of the lottery odds, the Knicks are still going to be bad. So when they win a game like this, I really don't think it's that big of a deal. If it ends up being the difference between them having the odds in the end of the year, sure, then you can get upset about it. That's fine. But it doesn't make any sense to sit here and say, oh, I wish they lost this game. If that's how you think, I get it. I do. But we just watch. I let no emotion with the winning or losing wash over me. I basically have the same feeling with the Knicks as I do the Giants, right, who lost to Philly today. When the Giants are doing well and they had those couple wins, which were obviously anomalies, they looked good against 2 of the worst teams in the league. Uh, it's just a okay, whatever. Like whatever happens, happens. If they're gonna end up screwing themselves out of a lottery pick because they won one stupid game, it sucks in hindsight. But in the moment, I don't think that's how we should be as fans. But we've said that before. Do you have anything else to say on that topic, or have we kind of established where we feel on that? And I think everyone knows.
No, yeah, I'm good there.
Yeah, it's we shall see. So the Knicks are back in action. When are we talking? Tuesday against Detroit. How's Detroit been playing recently? I find that they're not a league pass team for me. I never watch them.
I never watch them. I follow a bunch of Pistons guys, so I do keep up with it that way a little bit. But to my understanding, they are a very good but average team.
So the
Like
Detroit Pistons.
so they're exactly the Pistons. But I'm just trying to pull up what's their record?
They're 10-7.
Yeah, I mean they've been pretty good. I mean, I was looking over the numbers. Blake's been really, really tremendous to start the year for him.
I love Blake Griffin.
Which is funny because they have a miserable offense if you go by the numbers, but Blake's been just very, very quite good. So I think he's averaging 25, 10, and almost 5 assists.
I was always here for the Blake Griffin resurgence because I was one of the few super fans of the Lob City Clippers when everyone was making fun of them for losing the playoffs. I was crestfallen. That shot that Chris Paul hit against the Spurs was like one of my favorite moments in the NBA of the last 5 or 7 years. I loved it. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
So to have that resurgence, I'm with it. I'm with it. Did you have any other Knicks stuff that we wanted to hit on before we get out of here?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right, great. You want to plug our stuff before we hit the road?
Yeah, so we've had the Black Friday deals going on at the T Public store, but if you haven't already done so, go check that out. Everything's been 30% off. It'll be 30% off again tomorrow or today when you guys are listening to this. It'll be Monday. So we're going to have that running. It'll probably run all day Monday. So 30% off the entire store. Just get your holiday shopping with us. We have the jerseys, all the classics that we've always had, and just check out the tpublic.com Knicks wall store. Make sure you give this podcast a 5-star review. Leave a nice review. I think that's about it.
All right, awesome. So Knicks are back in action on Tuesday, and we will talk to you guys on Thursday. So thanks for hanging, and good night.
All right, take it easy.
Underneath you.